Hello, friends. Ted Wilcox here again to bring you into another thrilling chapter in our continuing saga of magic, mystery, and the American century. But before we begin, here's Charlie Pulcher with a brief review of our last episode.
Last time, Whiskey and Mickey formed an uneasy alliance and finally compared what they knew about the Demon Lord's motorcycle club. Rosie Fleischberg confirmed the military-grade tires tied to earlier abductions matched the evidence recovered from Hallie Baptiste's kidnapping scene. As traffic crawled across a Bay Area choking on carnival crowds and rising tension, the two investigators tested each other as carefully as the evidence itself. Mickey pushed at Whiskey's ties to the FBI. Whiskey pushed at the holes in Mickey's story. Both learned the other was hiding far more than they admitted. But one thing became clear. The Demon Lords were dangerous, connected, and almost certainly involved. Now, with fresh intel pointing toward the Whiskey Gulch Saloon in East Palo Alto, Whiskey heads straight into vampire territory, searching for answers. And while he plans to cast a careful net, Mickey has something far louder in mind. What happens next? We'll find out now.
This is the Mythic Chronicles. Entry 1. Crime Wave.
Chapter 29. Mickey commits to the bit. October 25th, 1951. Sandwiched between the monsters who'd already tried to kill her and the one who arguably had reason to, Mickey kept her posture loose, her grin dialed to maximum, and did her best not to start seriously rethinking her life choices. None of that, she warned herself. Fierce cookies and ice cream to these people. Catch a whiff, and they'll come straight for the source. So she tossed out a wolf whistle as they passed the dancers on stage. In all fairness, kicking the hornet's nest hadn't been a complete shot in the dark. While Mononobe cased the bar, laser-focused on the vamps, she'd been watching him. Or more precisely, the people watching him. That's how she'd spotted Harvey the bartender signaling a lookout near the stage, how she'd clocked the figure lurking behind the curtain when that lookout returned, and how, watching the way messages rippled through the staff, it hadn't taken much to piece together their plan for Mononobe. The Demon Lords were ambush hunters. Their habit of cycling hunting grounds the moment suspicion stirred was proof enough they were trying, albeit poorly, to keep a low profile. They liked their prey unaware, vulnerable, striking when it suited them. Show some teeth, and they'd pivot to defense. So she'd shown some teeth, cranked up the theatrics, forced them to react on her terms. And it worked. Mostly. She eyed Butcher leading them through the crowd. The way his near black eyes had bored into her was chilling, like staring down a coiled snake. With a man like him, it wasn't if he'd strike. It was when. And things only got worse from there. Something was off with the vampires. The too fluid, too synchronized way they moved set her nerves on edge. They didn't walk like people. They flowed, like a school of fish. What are you even worrying about? You've got backup. She glanced over her shoulder, barely suppressing a wince at Mononobe's glower. Totally reliable. Definitely not pissed off about being magically sucker-punched. Backup. She was honestly surprised he was still following. But when he'd turned his power on the bikers, her true sight revealed what was really happening. His shadow, the same warped thing she'd seen at the park and at Rosie's, had slithered out, twisting and stretching into inky tendrils that wrapped around the vampires like abyssal lassos. The instant it touched them, they changed, shrinking in on themselves as Mononobe's power took hold, enthralling them. She hadn't been about to let him Pied Piper Frankie Splotchface and his buddies, so she'd slapped him down with her disruption ring. The device was finicky, expensive, outrageously temperamental. But even before the Great Revelation, her mom's side of the family had been crafting totems. Channeling anima through weapons and enhancements had always come naturally, and the ring had done its job. It cleanly severed his hold in an instant, while barely dipping into her reserves. This time, she did wince. The whiplash from having whatever the hells he was doing cut off so suddenly couldn't have been pleasant. Yet here he is, she thought, resisting the urge to glance back again. Following you straight into the lion's den. Had she misjudged him? The memory of whatever was inside him surged up. No. Maybe he looked like he was doing the right thing, but she'd seen his truth. It was what he was. She'd be a fool to think otherwise. Stick to the plan, Mick. Keep the monsters pointed at each other, not at you. Forcing a bright smile, she shot him a wink. He answered with an even deeper frown. She gulped. Probably best not to piss him off any more than you already have, though. They followed the vampires past the curtain, into a dressing room where women in various states of undress froze, eyes locking onto them. Mickey met their gazes, which ranged from mildly curious to openly hostile, with detached professionalism as she trailed after the group down a narrow hallway. At some unseen cue, Frank stepped forward and opened a door. The others flanked the entry as Mickey, Mononobe, and Butcher stepped inside. She scanned the office. Medium-sized. Plain wooden desk, chairs, shelves. The only thing of note was the set of heavy, blood-red curtains draped behind the desk. Butcher moved to a shelf lined with bottles of amber, gold, deep red. "Drink?" he asked. Mickey shook her head, studying him. Positioned before the curtains, he looked as if he floated over a sea of blood. "No thanks, Butch. You might have missed it earlier, but my associate and I are here on official... I know who you are." His gaze flicked to Mononobe. "Both of you." Her brow furrowed. It made sense he'd know her. His goons had tried to kill her after all. But Mononobe? Still, Butcher continued, pouring himself a drink. Thick, red liquid clung to the glass, syrupy and slow. He took a sip, shuddering as it went down. "I was surprised to see you here." Then, as casually as discussing the weather, "You want to know about the 6 women we took?" Mickey blinked, her gaze flicking toward Mononobe. Butcher's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. He took another shivering sip. "Don't look so shocked," he said, easing into the chair behind the desk. "If you made it this far, you already know we took them. No point pretending." Mickey folded her arms. "Is that so?" Butcher's near-black eyes gave nothing away. His smirk widened just enough to flash canines as his gaze slid to Mononobe. "You sure you want to hitch your wagon to this one?" A cold spike slid through Mickey's gut. He'd said it casually, with no more drama than asking if she wanted to split lunch, but it landed hard. The truth was, she was in a room surrounded by vampires. Who knew how many goons a shout away? Their vampire boss. And Mononobe. If he turned on her now, she was dead. She felt his eyes on her. Forcing down the surge of panic, she kept her posture loose, her expression bored, met his gaze, and quirked an eyebrow. Mononobe held her stare for a heartbeat. Then he turned back to Butcher and shrugged. "We have an agreement." Butcher studied him a moment longer, then gave a small, resigned shrug and took another sip of blood. "Suit yourself." "Since we're all feeling chatty," Mickey said, pulling his attention back, "why don't you tell us what you did with the women?" Butcher shrugged again. "What I was ordered to do?" Mickey's brow lifted. According to the information Rosie pulled from the FBI database, the Demon Lords were fiercely independent, with no listed ties to any larger organization. "They?" she asked, just as Mononobe said. "Ordered?" Their eyes met, mirrored irritation flickering, before snapping back to Butcher. "Answer the question," they said in unison. Mickey clenched her jaw. "Okay, enough of that," she muttered, arms crossing. Butcher chuckled, his gaze drifting between them. "It really is surprising to see you here. Only hours after they..." He cut himself off, clearing his throat. Mickey narrowed her eyes. Had that tremor in his hands been there before? "Are the women still alive?" Mononobe asked. Butcher took another slow sip. "For now." Hope surged in Mickey's chest, but she reined it in. "All right, back to the first question." Her voice hardened. "Who ordered you to take them?" Butcher's gaze dropped to his drink. This time, Mickey was sure of it. His hands were trembling. Dirty fucking Pachuco wetbacks and their pet dwimmers have been trying to worm their way into our territory since this club's founding, he muttered. We fought them off. Thought we'd scared them off for good. His voice hitched. His head jerked, as if slapped by something unseen. His face drained of color, and he took another sip of blood. When he spoke again, it was barely a whisper. Until he came. Mickey's stomach twisted at the terror in his voice. She shot a glance at Mononobe. He looked just as thrown. Who? Butcher's gaze snapped back to her, fever bright. His words came faster now, his mannerisms turning twitchy. A German, some lawyer, hired to negotiate safe passage through our territory. Said they'd pay for the privilege. Nothing unusual. We let people willing to pay pass through all the time. Mickey frowned. He have a name? Butcher's hands shook so badly he had to set the glass down. Schultz, he whispered. Mononobe inhaled, sharp enough to make her jump, but before she could press, Butcher barreled on. There wasn't anything we could do, he said, voice tight. He forced us to mule the LME's drugs. We ran shipments all over the state. Still are. His voice cracked. I've done bad things. During the war, after. His fingers whitened around the glass. But the LME made us do worse. Mickey fixed him with a hard look. We sell nothing that ain't already being sold, Butcher insisted, almost pleading. And all our girls are workers, willing participants. You got that? The shift in his tone was unsettling, but she couldn't help herself. A snort escaped, bubbling into a chuckle. Every monster I've met. Her eyes flicked to Mononobe, then back to Butcher. Human or mythic, reads from the same script. Always some excuse to justify the ugly parts. She tilted her head. I suppose the women you kidnapped just, what, volunteered? For a moment, she thought he might lunge at her, but instead he lifted his glass for another drink. It really is amazing you're here, you know that? He muttered, eyes on the nearly empty glass. But then again, they have a way of making things work in their favor. He chuckled, low and bitter. Working for people like that. His grip tightened. It's no picnic. The humor drained from his face, though his eyes never left the glass. Bliss helps, opens your mind, teaches you where you stand in this universe. And Mononobe's head whipped toward the door. A heartbeat later, the door swung open, and Frank Splotchface stepped in, followed by the other two vampires, their eyes locked on Butcher. Mickey raised her hands, palms empty. Wait a second, fellas, she said, glancing at Mononobe. He had angled himself to keep everyone in view. Butcher licked a smear of blood from his palm. It enhances your connections, he murmured. Moves you beyond more traditional means of communication. Mickey's gut tightened. Mononobe caught her eye. His irises had darkened, shifting from periwinkle to an unnatural violet. His gaze flicked right, toward the nearest vampire, then back. Butcher giggled. Hey, now that I really am feeling chatty, I've got a question for you. Did you know the LME makes more than one kind of drug? He knocked back the rest of his drink. Bliss is great, he sighed, but I prefer zeal. Then he lurched, doubling over as if about to retch. His body convulsed, skin bubbled, warped. Mickey watched in transfixed horror as the whites of his eyes turned blood red while capillaries burst. His jaw cracked, distending with a sickening pop, his grin stretching past human limits. Skin split, and he screamed a sound halfway between agony and ecstasy. Blinking, Mickey wrenched her gaze away from the grotesque transformation, and her eyes found Mononobe. What'd I tell ya? She said, letting her smile take on a berserker edge. Everything's going according to plan.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Mythic Chronicles. The story continues every Tuesday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the journey, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast. Your words might help bring more mythics into the fold. To listen ahead, unlock bonus content, and gain access to VIP Discord roles and behind-the-scenes updates, check out our Patreon or visit us at SeanTLaffertyBooks.com. I'm Sean. Thanks again for being here.